So I have a story for this, and it actually comes from this room. So a few years back, Dean Kamen spoke here. Was anyone here for that, by the way? Okay, so a few hands. I was. Hopefully everyone knows who Dean Kamen is, but so he reinforced something that I had been coming to appreciate for a while, which is that getting lost is awesome. And really, the reason is that the adventure begins when you get lost. If you go down the pathway of development, you're going to have all kinds of turns, unexpected opportunities, and you really want to be paying attention to those. And you want to be comfortable with being comfortable with getting lost. Okay, I hope everyone knows who Dean Kamen is. If you don't, he's an incredibly prolific innovator. Not just inventor, but an innovator. Because he's developed tons of stuff that has actually been deployed and had an impact on society. And so here's some of his inventions. I mean, the one many people are familiar with is the Segway. And so he spoke here a few years ago, and being somebody who wants very badly to deliver innovation after innovation, I thought, wow, I have a chance to talk to Dean Kamen after he speaks at Entrepreneur Hour. So I had a chance for about a minute to talk to him. So I approached him and I said, I was thinking before, I thought, what do I want to ask him? And what I wanted to ask him was, how do I take something from like the fabrication stage or the prototype stage to the delivery part? Because that's where I always fell. Like I might invent a new toy for my kids, let them play with it, and then I never do anything with it after that. Or I've invented a new kind of fountain that I've never seen before, and friends will come over and I'll show them this amazing fountain, and they're like, wow, that's cool. But then it just gets put on this shelf in my garage, and with all the other prototypes that I have, and I call them my garage inventions. So I thought I'd ask Dean Kamen, well, what should I do next? And a lot of through my personal process of doing this, that's always the question I have is, what should I do next? So I asked him, I said, I have these inventions and I build them, but then that's it. I prototype them, that's it. And I said, what should I do next? Right? So he hears my question, he starts thinking, and I'm standing there going, wow, I'm ready for this pearl of wisdom from like the modern day Edison, right? And he says, I don't know. So I'm kind of taken aback, right? Like, how doesn't he know? He's like modern day Edison. So I sort of take a second and like, okay, what do you mean you don't know? You're like, what should I do next? And he looks at me and says, I don't know. So by now I'm a little bit frustrated and not knowing really what he means, and he's really saying something without saying it, which he happily, fortunately I should say, volunteered. And he said, the reason I don't know is that after you've developed a product, 50 things would have had to have happened that you could have never predicted, right? Before going through it, you could have never planned on these things happening. And I thought that was really interesting because what he's saying is that the path is never straight. And oftentimes when you look at somebody developing something, or if you look at somebody succeeding in almost any profession, the story is told like a straight line, but it isn't. It's this fuzzy process that's unpredictable. The key is to find something to go after, and that you don't know unless you go. So later I found a quote from him, and it speaks to this. He says, people take the longest possible paths, digress to numerous dead ends, and make all kinds of mistakes. Then historians come along and write summaries of this messy, nonlinear process and make it appear like a simple, straight line. So this is coming from like our modern day Edison, right? So if you're working on something, don't expect it to be obvious. Don't expect it to be easy. Expect to fail more than you succeed. If failure is an important part, you want to get through that as quickly as you can. Watson, one of the developers of the personal computer, had a really good quote. He says, if you want to increase your chance of success, double your failure rate. Right? So I think these great innovators who've been through this really appreciate this. And just to go back one slide, a quote that I didn't point out, that Dean Kamen said is, my biggest failure is I have too many to talk about. Yet he's incredibly successful. Right? Go figure that one out. So this is the story. I love this. This is like the startup story you hear in the news, right? Oh, hey, did you hear about that acquisition? The company that got acquired for $1 billion? This company Instagram, there was like 6 to 8 engineers, and they focused on easy, simple photo sharing. They worked for like 2 years, and then Facebook comes along and acquires them for $1 billion. Isn't that amazing? Right? That's the story that we hear. But that's not the story. That's the story. And the difference is that this requires perseverance, the other one doesn't. And this took me a long time, I'd say years, to really appreciate. First in doing science, and then later in trying to do a startup, because it's just, you're doing something new, right? So how many here snowboard? Okay, how many remember the first time snowboarding? Does somebody want to shout out how many times you fell the first time you went snowboarding? Can we get a couple numbers? Did somebody say too many to count? So I probably fell 100 times, right? Why is that? And should I have expected not to fall? No, I should have expected to fall a lot because I'm learning something new. I'm doing something new. I'm at the edge of what I know and what I'm comfortable with. So if we're developing a new product or a new technology, or discovering new science even for that matter, we're doing something new. So of course there's going to be perseverance. Of course there's going to be failure. So that was another lesson. And for me, this is what my career path looks like. I was a student up until 2007. I thought, I'm originally from California, and I thought, I'll move back to California as soon as I graduate. But that wasn't the case. And the reason it wasn't the case was because I found something that I wanted to address, a problem that I thought was worth solving. And so I stayed thinking, I'll start a company maybe after a year and then try to get it going. Well, I didn't really start my company until 2009 and didn't receive venture capital financing until 2010. So 3 years after I initially planned. And in the process, I'm not going to go into all this, but you can see this is just a list of some of the things I participated in. Some of the training, some of the competitions, some of the activities. And this doesn't even count all the meetings and mentoring and so many things. So, and I remember it must have been 2008, I was incredibly frustrated. I felt like I was spinning my wheels. Everything was fuzzy. I didn't know what to do next. And then, I talked to Dean Kamen. Didn't necessarily clear it up. But I started realizing that can be a part of the process. But the thing you want to do is to get through that part of the process as quickly as possible. And the way you do that is by increasing your failure rate.